Welcome, everyone. I'm Richard French along with Andrew Whitman, and yes, of course, we are tracking Hurricane Sandy here, and Andrew is projected all day. This has been a combination of wind, rain, and surges not seen before in a lifetime. And as wide-ranging as we feared that it would be, impacting the New York metro area, the Philadelphia metro area, the D.C. area as well, as we broadcast tonight on FiOS 1 New Jersey, Long Island, RNN, TVE, and FiOS 1 Potomac, as wide-ranging as we imagined that it would be. Let's get the very latest on where the storm is right now and what it's doing on the ground. Meteorologist Jeff Desnoyers standing by in the FiOS 1 Weather Center with the very latest. Jeff, where is Sandy right now?
Just off the coast at this point, moving in. You know, we originally thought it would be about 8 p.m. It looks like the time frame is just about now, and you can kind of see that here on the satellite. What I want to point out to you for the most part is that when you're talking about the system, you're looking at a lot of circulation and a little bit of dryness around it. And then what I'm talking about is, you see how it's circulating right here? But notice a little pocket of dry air. As this continues to race to the west, things are drying out around it. So we're actually seeing a little bit less rain. The bad news is we're getting a lot of wind because we're on the northern side of this system. Therefore, the wind will just continue as we head into the nighttime. Peak winds, we'll probably be seeing that pretty soon here, but I think that as we head into midnight, we're still going to be talking about gusts to about 70 to 80 miles per hour, and we're seeing that right now across the region. Some very strong winds, and you don't need a lot of rain. I mean, we got light to moderate rain across the region, but when you factor that into the flooding that we've already seen, especially coastal flooding, and with those winds whipping that rain around, making it very nasty outside, with this system really winding up and bottoming out, the pressure itself has dropped. Therefore, we know that it's very intense, and that's the reason why we're seeing the very strong winds with the enhanced cloud cover, and we're going to continue to see this kind of drift to the west and then take a northerly track, and once it hits landfall, it's going to move very, very slowly, and that slow movement will keep it around in the forecast not only for tonight but tomorrow and even into the day on Thursday. Now, I don't think we have the same intensity as we head into tomorrow night and into Wednesday, but keep in mind, into Thursday, most of this system is going to pass through here tonight. I think that's when we get the strongest of winds, the heaviest of rains, and we start to see things kind of wind down as we head to the day tomorrow. I mean, it's a pretty intense system, and when you're talking about it in terms of the winds that we're seeing created with the system gusting, you know, over 60 miles per hour. But what I want to point out is, look at these sustained winds, anywhere between 30 and 40 miles per hour. And what's happening is you get these strong northeasterly winds. It's just piling the water up along the coastline, and that's the problem that we're having. I think surge is the #1 concern we've dealt with so far, especially when you have winds gusting now to 67 miles per hour in Uniondale, 67 in Islip, and it's the surge that's been the issue for the first part of the storm. Now, as we head in the next couple hours, I think you can kind of take the surge back a bit and kind of focus on the wind, and that's what we're doing right now as we continue to see these really strong wind gusts. And, you know, some areas will have hurricane force winds tonight, and we'll continue to see those gusts in near 70, 75, maybe even 80. I mean, it's just going to be a very windy and a very dangerous situation across much of the region.
Hey, Jeff, let's talk about some of those surges, and I'm going to use Atlantic City as a reference point here. We've been covering this, obviously, since the crack of dawn this morning, and some of the scenes playing out in Atlantic City have really been something. This is a shot from earlier today. There were some accounts that literally half the city was almost underwater per some eyewitness accounts, but it was already hitting the boardwalk, you know, mid-morning when we were on set. Talk about some of the surges, like how high these surges are. And again, I guess the worst of it is going to be beginning shortly here with the big surge that's upon them.
Correct. You know, I think one thing that you have to point out about Atlantic City is that when that storm moved in a little bit closer last night, the time frame for Atlantic City is a little different for us. And the reason why you're seeing all that flooding in Atlantic City during the morning hours was because they had a very strong onshore flow during the overnight, and the tides themselves were incredibly high when that particular part of the storm moved through their area. So what they did was not only did they have a strong surge, which was anywhere between 6 to 10 feet, but you had astronomical high tides at the same time. And what we saw this morning in Atlantic City was all the flooded roadways. And actually, the good news for Atlantic City, even though they are underwater right now, the good news is, as the storm moves closer to our area for Atlantic City, they get on the backside of the system, which means they'll actually turn their winds to the west, which will be an offshore flow, which is in the opposite direction direction that brought all the water in, it will help bring a little bit of the water out, but obviously the damage has already been done by just seeing some of these amazing videos that you're seeing here. I mean, that's a lot of water that they're going to have to get rid of before they see some improving conditions.
Thank you, Jeff. And we're going to check back in a little bit. And Andrew, right before we came on, Fox 1 was broadcasting what the press conference with Governor Christie, and specifically he was addressing Atlantic City, and there was definitely some daylight with him and the mayor of Atlantic City, where he pointed the finger of blame at the mayor for not mandating evacuation for all residents, even though he was saying it. And now he's saying those people, to use his words, will have to ride this thing out till at the earliest tomorrow morning. He won't be sending in people to do rescue, given both the conditions on the ground, the darkness, etc. And you've got a very dangerous situation playing out in Atlantic City.
And it's not just Atlantic City. Every finger island on the Jersey Shore, we heard from Governor Christie saying, excuse me, going to be off limits, really difficult movement in or out, and you're taking your chances for the people who are stuck there. If they need emergency services, probably not going to be able to get it, with the exception of the people who are on the Finger Islands themselves.
And
that
to put in a
includes
little
Atlantic
context,
City.
I heard there was a famous storm in 1962, the Ash Wednesday storm they talked about in Atlantic City, which was kind of the threshold for the biggest surge that they had seen. And they said that this will surpass this, and believably by a pretty decent margin here. So obviously they shut down all of the casinos and hotels day prior, but still with what's left behind and what's upon them, it will be a very rough night in AC.
And we're hearing similar stories all up and down the eastern seaboard, from the Finger Islands of Maryland and the Delmarva Peninsula, Ocean City, Maryland, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and on and up. As for the mainland itself, let's get a check on conditions. We're going to head to New Jersey now. Fios 1 Samantha Liebman is in Jersey City, New Jersey. Samantha, how are things in Jersey City right now? How bad is the wind? How bad is the rain?
The wind is unbelievably strong. I mean, we're having a lot of trouble just staying up. You're going to see me struggle to fight the wind. We're on the banks here of the Hudson River, and Brendan, I don't know if we can see that, but the water is already coming up over the bank. So high tide hasn't even arrived yet. So if it's only coming up this much now, imagine they're thinking maybe 9-10 feet up here. And believe it or not, there's still some people out here not heeding what Mayor Jeremiah Healy has been saying. He has been telling people to stay in. There was a mandatory evacuation from low-lying areas from 7 a.m. this morning, but he says a lot of people did not heed that call because he checked in with all the city's 7 shelters, and they were not at capacity, far from it, and that was only a couple hours ago. So he's encouraging people, if they can still get to a shelter, to do so. There is also a curfew in effect that started at 6 p.m. tonight, and that goes until 1 p.m. tomorrow. Same situation in Hoboken. There are certain areas, though, those are the low-lying areas in flood-prone areas in Jersey City, but he says if you have not evacuated and you live on a low floor, emergency personnel may not be able to help you. So wind is whipping out here, rain not so much, but again, as you see, the waters are coming up over the banks of the Hudson River. So that is the latest here from Jersey City. Samantha Liebman, back to you, Rich.
Thank you very much, Samantha. And you know, Andrew, this morning, in the 5 o'clock hour, we were live with Barb Consigli, was the report at the time, and you saw progressively from 5 to 7 to 9 in the morning, she would do a stand-up, and you saw the waves lapping up, and then they got on the platform where she was standing. And then the Whitecaps starting to come over, so then she moved up to grass. And then progressively, higher and higher ground, and we kept saying to ourselves, my gosh, we hadn't even seen the first surge. Then it happened, the bigger surge, which is about to happen now, and then there's another surge, as Jeff had mentioned, that'll be coming tomorrow morning. So one of the troubling scenes we saw were the people, and I think most people, the vast majority, have heeded these warnings that all mayors from the metropolitan area and also from up and down the mid-Atlantic states have been issuing to take this very seriously, and they have. They've either evacuated, they've gone to shelters, they've gone to higher ground. However, there were people walking around with children, literally, to try and get an eyewitness to, I suppose, history, but now there is no time. They shut down at 2 o'clock the roadways in Jersey City to get out, just as an example, and And I think people may be regretting right now. I'm sure they're regretting they didn't take this more seriously.
One of the biggest fears that we have, and this is from covering storms like this on the Gulf Coast for years, is that you keep warning people and eventually people become deaf to the warnings. Yep. You warn them so many times and eventually people begin to stop heeding the warnings. It was a major concern with Irene last year that we went through so many warnings and people wound up staying in the evacuation zones. And as a result of that, there was a fear, and I've seen reporting throughout the day that there are more people in the evacuation zones that have not been heeding the call here because it wasn't a problem last year. Let's go to Natalie Patterson, who is reporting for FiOS 1 out of Rumson, New Jersey, and let's get the very latest on the conditions there. Natalie, looks like you've taken shelter in your car.
Yes, we had to. The last time we spoke to you guys, we were actually on the Rumson Bridge, which is right behind me, and the winds, I've been listening to you guys talk about the winds. They've just gotten so intense so quickly here in Rumson. When you cross this bridge, you cross into Seabright, New Jersey, and we know Seabright is completely flooded at this point. What you have in Seabright is you have the ocean on the one side, you have the Shrewsbury River on the other. All afternoon, we watched that Shrewsbury River rise little by little, then it would recede just a little bit, then it would start to rise again. At one point around 2:30, there were actually 3-foot waves in the Shrewsbury River. That calmed down, then the water just started ripping down the water so quickly. It's something I've never seen in this area, and this is the area I grew up in, and I've never seen it move that fast. We know that emergency officials were evacuated from Seabright around 2:30 this afternoon. That's your fire officials, EMS, police department. They all got out of there. It was no longer safe for them to be in Seabright. They set up shop over at the Rumson Fire Department. And recently, just in the last hour or so, we've watched a lot of police cars cross the Rumson Bridge. So we're not sure right now if in Seabright the roads are completely flooded, but they must be because people are telling us that they can't get past. There's a Dunkin' Donuts right on the other side of this bridge, right as you come into Seabright, and someone walked over the bridge and came back and told us that the Dunkin' Donuts was flooded. So we're not sure where police are going. We just saw 2 EMS workers from Rumson cross the bridge. So when they come back, we're going to ask them what's going on. So officials are still responding. We watched them. There was a fire alarm right here in these back communities, which right now are completely flooded. We took video of that earlier today, and we're going to get that to you as soon as possible. But the water is coming up very high. The last time we saw it, right before it got very dark, the water was probably 6 inches deep at the deepest parts. So right now, it's just a dire situation. We're watching conditions really deteriorate. The trees that were standing straight up earlier today are now just swaying, and there were people out on the road. I'm going to close up this window for a second. They were out on the road, and police came and told them to get out of this area because this is no longer a safe place to be. That there are trees around us, which we've been hearing snapping and crackling. If you see headlights coming past, people can't drive into Seabright. They're allowing people to get out of Seabright. So we're not sure right now how many people are still in Seabright. No one can really tell us from Office of Emergency Management, but they are letting people come back if they can.
Okay. Thank you very much. And it's fair to say, and Jeff Desnoyers will join us in a little bit, that when the storm was first tracking, we thought it would be an equal opportunist, if you will. It would hit in Jersey as well as on the Long Island areas. And obviously, we're going to be talking about some of the mid-Atlantic states, also Delaware taking a pounding, Maryland also, and Virginia certainly not being spared. But it seems from the curvature of it that New Jersey, central and southern New Jersey, and also northern for that matter, has really taken the biggest brunt of it. But we also have seen really scenes unfolding. These pictures, by the way, that you're seeing right there in Maryland earlier today in Ocean City. That's
Ocean City, where one of the major piers there is half crumbled, apparently, during the overnight hours. The other big story of this day, everybody, I'm sure, has been keeping tabs on this crane in Midtown Manhattan above 57th Street. Our own Kim Lengel has been monitoring that. She joins us now live from New York City, from Midtown. Kim, what's the latest from where you are? That crane's still dangling, right?
Well, yeah, and I just also want to mention that this is an all-around bad situation for New York City because in Lower Manhattan in Battery Park, we're awaiting imminent flooding, and Governor Cuomo made a comment in a press conference today. Irene had 9.5-foot swells. We're expecting over 11-foot swells, and his comment was something to the effect of, I know a lot about this storm that most people don't know, and if it were up to me, I would get the heck out of Dodge. But complicating the issues in New York City right now, in Midtown West in particular, is a crane that's dangling 65 stories over 57th Street, a major thoroughfare that was very busy. Right now it's evacuated, and we're going to look up in the sky here and see if you can see what the crane looks like dangling. If you can't see it because the rain is directly hitting our camera here, we're going to wipe the lens for you. But let me describe it for you. So you have the arm of the crane dangling from the body of the apparatus here, and fire officials say they have no way of securing that arm. We don't know if it's because of the hurricane, or we don't know if it's just because they can't secure it at this point. They have evacuated all hotels and buildings, and this whole area here for a radius of a few blocks is shut down. It's a very fluid situation. We have close to a dozen fire department trucks here. Several police cars are here, and they're still going in and out. We were told by fire officials not to expect any more information for the next few hours because they simply don't have any. They're really concentrating on what to do with this situation. Now, you saw construction. It was at 65 stories where that arm is dangling. The building is proposed to go up to 90 stories, one of the tallest buildings in the city, and it's supposed to be a record-breaking closing, a sale price of $90 million for a penthouse. So we're all sort of waiting here with bated breath as we get these gusts that, are about 60 miles an hour, hoping that we come out of this in the best case scenario. Back to you, Andrew.
Hey, and Kim, it's Rich. Give a kind of a snapshot. We're going to bring in Jeff at the weather desk in a minute, but we've seen a lot of road closures, certainly in and around Manhattan. The FDR reportedly underwater right now. But Battery Park, give the ideas of the low-lying areas in New York City, just how much water is already on the ground and the fears here as to some of the flooding that we really haven't seen in New York City in a long, long time.
Well, flooding is imminent, and let's not forget, as early as this morning, about 9 o'clock, we were seeing water literally bubbling up from the sewers and the rainwater systems here. They were already at capacity at about 9 o'clock. We know the flooding is imminent. How bad it's going to be, we're not entirely sure. We have also Con Edison saying that they may preemptively shut down the power supply to that area and parts of Manhattan because this is New York Harbor, this is salt water, and this could cause major damage to their infrastructure. So they're saying that if they shut it down earlier than needs be, they might be able to, not do as bad in the long run. Rich?
With flooding, Andrew, relating to the subway system right now, and and they were talking about because of how it's done with the gravity system that they use here. I mean, we saw bubbling. I remember this morning I was on set before 8 a.m. and they already had bubbling up underneath the potholes right now, so there's a major problem. Let's go back to the Garden State. We have Christy Duffy, who's coming to us from Cape May. She's joining us live there, and set the scene for us because behind you, I know it's tough with the lights down, Christy. You have a very angry surf.
That's right, a very angry tide. In fact, we're just hours away from high tide, which will be an interesting sight to see. The eye of the storm is now right over us. It has made landfall here in Cape May at the southernmost tip of New Jersey. We're now up to wind speeds of about 50 miles per hour with wind gusts at about 80 miles per hour where we are. And if you look behind me at the way the trees are really being whipped around, you can see what I mean. It's really blowing around the water that now covers the street behind me, right along the coast here, as well as the water that is now completely covered and flooded the beach here. Now those waves, if you could see them at all, they're coming in hard and fast and becoming more massive and thunderous by the minute, and we still do need to get through high tide, Rich. We expect that surge to be around 8 o'clock tonight. Now, speaking with state police a short time ago, there have been a number of rescues and multiple fires reported throughout southern New Jersey. Firefighters and first responders, we're told, are struggling to even get to those emergencies with the roads and the conditions like you can see just behind me now. We now know that at least 3 people in southern New Jersey are being treated at area hospitals after an accident that involved a National Guard vehicle. The National Guard struck with another vehicle after colliding. It overturned. We're told all those people in stable condition. In a separate incident, a group of state troopers had to rescue people who were trapped in their vehicle in Atlantic City. A 2.5-foot wall of water and debris swept their car off the roadway, trapping them inside. Luckily, those state troopers were able to get to them. Both of these, Rich, are good examples of why people should listen to officials when they warn them to really stay off the roads in these conditions. Live in Cape May, I'm Christy Duffy. Back to you, Rich.
All right, Christy, thank you very much. And, you know, we should get an idea as it relates to the storm surge. And we're going to go beyond just New Jersey and Long Island. And Andrew, as a resident, one-time resident of Maryland here, they're taking a beating too. We're going to get a snapshot of that in a few minutes. But let's bring in Jeff Desnoyers now. And Jeff, it was a little tough, I think, for some of the viewers to make off in the distance some of the storm surges that we were seeing behind Christy and Cape May. But we're seeing swells and waves 15, 20 feet, sometimes even more in the Atlantic right offshore here, and we're not even at the surge yet. That's another hour and a half or so away, right?
You are right on. I mean, that's the thing. One thing I want to point out too, when it gets dark outside like this, it can get really scary because at the coast right now, you have an incredible surge and the waves are breaking and the water is rising, and we're getting into high tide now in many locations across the area. And if you shouldn't be out anyway, but if you come across an area, it may be tough to see that water coming up and over into the roadways now. And keep in mind too, we have a saturated ground now. It's been raining most of the day. As the winds continue tonight, very dangerous situation when it gets dark outside and you have trees falling on power lines and you can't quite see things like you can during the day and cause some very dangerous conditions during the overnight. The actual center is just off the coast. It will make its way into the area sometime in the next, well, about half hour to an hour, and we're going to continue to see a strong surge with incredibly windy conditions during the evening hours. Some areas will have gusts to near 85 miles per hour, and then considering the flooding that we've already had, coastal flooding that we've already had, we're just going to continue to see that because keep in mind, we have an astronomical high tide right now, and that's going to contribute to even more coastal flooding than what we've seen in the past almost 24 hours now. The rain totals, they're not really all that impressive. Irene actually pumped out more rain, but I think that as we head into the day on Tuesday, generally a 2 to 6 inch rainfall across the region, and some areas actually in eastern Long Island will see probably less than 2 inches, to be honest, because it's just not a big rainmaker. The way the system worked into the area, we are on the wind side of it, and we are getting the winds. We've seen sustained winds 40 to 50 already. We're going to see those gusts even stronger into the overnight hours. And then finally, by morning on Tuesday, it will still be windy out there, but I think we will not be seeing any more 60 to 80 wind gusts. We'll start to see those winds gusting maybe about 50, 55 miles per hour, but it's all about the direction of the wind. And the good news is, as we head into Tuesday, those winds will start to shift to the south. They won't be those battering northeasterly winds that we've had really for the last 24 hours that have contributed to the high surf and the coastal flooding that we've seen. So as we change the wind direction, that will be a good thing as we head into Tuesday, even though the winds will stay strong.
But Jeff, so just so I got clarity, the worst is still to come here. In terms of some of the surges, we should see something in the next hour or so with the high tides, and then there'll be a third surge in the early morning. Am I right?
Yeah, we have a problem until about 8 p.m. tonight with the high tides, and then a big thing to watch tomorrow will be the high tides in the morning. But keep in mind, different areas will be hit tomorrow morning. We've seen many areas like along the northeastern coast of New Jersey here, in the Barrier Islands and portions of southern portions of the South Shore get hit real hard. I think tomorrow a little bit of a break for the Jersey coast, but watch out South Shore, Long Island, and into portions of the Long Island Sound. I think those are the areas we have to turn our attention to as we head into the day tomorrow.
Winds, as anybody knows who's been outside here, unbelievable, the strength and the persistence and the length of it. But we've been focusing on the Long Island and New Jersey areas, Andrew. But as we said, this storm played no favorites. Coming up the Atlantic coastline, we've seen bizarre weather scenes.
We absolutely have. And starting on the Maryland coast, we've seen that pier go down partially overnight in Ocean City, Maryland, and apparently significant damage to the boardwalk area there. There's some of the pictures from earlier today. From Ocean City, Maryland, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and the Delaware coast, the Delmarva Peninsula getting pretty well battered. Washington, D.C., obviously you're getting localized high water there, as well as the water off the Chesapeake. The federal government is shut down in D.C. The entire public transit system, the Metro, Virginia, and Maryland transit systems are down as well. The Bay Bridge that connects the eastern shore of Maryland to the main portion of Maryland, that has been closed down. Getting mixed reports on the Millard Tidings Bridge, which crosses the Susquehanna. This is in western Virginia, I believe, and you can see snow coming down. This is a cold weather system that was moving out of the Midwest, mixing with all of the moisture coming off from Sandy. And yeah, in some of the higher elevations, there are actually blizzard warnings in effect for West Virginia and some of the western portions of Virginia, and maybe even western Maryland once you start getting towards
Unbelievable.
The western part of that state. I can tell you the Delaware Memorial Bridge is open but moving very, very slowly. And really, it's just a matter of where you are. Low-lying areas. The second wave of all of this is going to be the low-lying areas inland, with the combination of the rain and the whole system being backed up by water coming in from the shore. All that rain's going to come down and have nowhere to go, and you could wind up with significant flooding portions far removed from a river or an ocean.
Yeah, it's not just getting through tonight, as Andrew just said. It's tomorrow and then the days after, and we haven't even got to the outages. We're going to get into that. All right, we're going to jump to a very quick commercial break. When we come back here, we're going to set the scene and take you up and down the Atlantic coastline, as Andrew kind of set the stage for. We'll be right back. Hurricane Sandy coverage continues right after this.